Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Lobby, GameSpot's weekly hangout where we talk about the newest video games and the events of the past week in the video games industry. I'm Mike Mahardy, your host here as usual with Pete Brown, reviews editor here.
Hey, man.
What have you been up to lately? Have you been reviewing anything you can talk about?
We're going to talk about Yakuza later.
Yeah.
Other than that, not reviewing anything myself, but I am very stoked today. I have a very nerdy purchase. Can I explain my nerdy purchase?
Pete's a very avid collector.
Yeah.
I don't know where you're going with this, but you're an avid collector of like old games for people who don't know.
Yes. Do you know what the TurboGrafx is?
Mm-mm.
No? So back...
I do, but for listeners who don't, explain.
It was basically a competitor to the Super Nintendo and Genesis, kind of, back in the day.
Okay.
Do you understand what it is now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Don't.
So the Japanese version, eventually they released a combined one that had the CD add-on and the original system kind of combined in one. And I have one, the Turbo Duo R, and mine's a little bit dingy. On eBay this weekend, I found a guy in Puerto Rico selling a mint, like totally extremely clean case that had been modded for RGB video out already, with a CD assembly as well. I know you're following all of this. Mm-hmm. I won it for $1.25.
And what would you normally expect it to go for?
You don't see people selling just the shells of these old consoles.
Yeah.
But it makes sense though, because especially one like this that's extremely clean, perfect way to dress up an old system you've got that's kind of gross. But yeah, it shipped from Puerto Rico on Monday and it's showing up today.
Puerto Rico?
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm
Is
super
it
stoked.
like a dry place now? Is that where you store these kind of things?
It's in the mail. It's showing up today.
Will it be in a dry place? Or will you put it in water?
I'm going to put it mostly in water.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm going to swap out my old case, put that in the box, put that in storage, and then play my system.
Interesting. All right. I'm also here with Aaron Sampson.
How's it going, Mike?
Going well. What are you're here to talk about Ghost Recon today. I know I see a lot of people in the chat. We do have the chat up, by the way. Again,
chat.
our audience, thanks for joining us. We have the YouTube chat, the Twitch chat open. It's right in front of us, so feel free to...
my head is shaped like a footpath.
Thanks, Udit Singh, for that comment. We are going to be monitoring that the entire show, so we're glad everybody can hang out. Aaron, what have you been up to lately?
I do what I do every weekend, which is I say I'm going to play the Call of Duty campaign, and then I play Titanfall.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That's pretty much every weekend
Those
for
are
me.
both good.
Yeah.
What do you think of... Did you play Titanfall 2's campaign?
Titanfall 2's campaign was good. Like, it was... It did what it needed to do. I actually was one of the guys who loved the multiplayer campaign and played a lot more of the multiplayer campaign from the first game. And the only thing I wanted was for that to just be a little bit more involved for players to actually determine the outcome of the game. Because Titanfall 1 sort of ended with you guys want some rounds and we want some rounds and now let's all just fight some more rounds. There was really no resolution to, no impact the players had on that.
Did you like the, I don't want to spoil too much, but did you like the effect and cause level in the campaign? Did you play that one?
The effect and cause level, I think that was Rob Handler's favorite level.
It was a lot of people's.
Yeah. I thought that had some stiff competition with, and I don't remember the name, but the factory level where it was like Portal. You were fighting.
Oh, yeah.
You were fighting in a
Platforming
building that was being constructed as you battled on it and turned sideways and upside down. And I think it did incredible things with the movement that I hadn't seen before.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of a good segue because there's another mission in Dishonored 2, Cracking the Slab, that's sort of similar mechanics. And speaking of Dishonored 2, to get to our newsreel section, we're just kind of rattling off smaller events that happened that we're not devoting entire segments to. Dishonored 2's second major update came out this week. So apparently it adds a lot of stability to the PC version, so hopefully all those problems are set. Maybe there will be continuing ones in the future, but the update also adds a mission select option and new difficulty setting sliders on all three platforms. So you can kind of, affect how fast sleep darts take effect, which I'm super into because I play that game really stealthily. There's also iron mode, so you die, you restart the entire game.
Do you want to play this game with permadeath? Just throwing that out there.
It would be hard as hell because then there's no, I don't think it's if it's XCOM 2-ish, then there's no autosave, right? You just can't.
That's what the patch notes said.
Yeah.
If you're dead, you're dead.
That's insane.
What's a typical playthrough for Dishonored 2? How long would you have to survive?
Oh, man. Well, I mean, there's 9 missions, and you can fly through them you could fly through them if you want to. In my replay, I'm on mission 7, and I'm at 9 hours.
Oof.
I'm taking my time, though.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so you could theoretically lose 14 hours in this game.
Well, yeah, if you can survive that long. That's what I'm getting at. That's rough.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I imagine you'd have to go a stealth playthrough. In other news, Avalanche Software, who was the former Disney Infinity developer, and then they shuttered, 2-3 months ago?
Something around, maybe maybe like 6.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Well, they're back now under Warner Bros. Working on Cars 3, the game. Aaron, you said it's kind of dark for Cars?
I have kids, and that movie trailer, I did not show my kids that trailer because it was like really dark.
It's just the Empire Strikes Back of Cars, except at the end of the trilogy. Like super dark.
Right.
I don't want
David Fincher is directing Cars 3. That'll be a baptism by fire for kids who have never seen anything besides Cars 1 and 2. Also, Overwatch's Chinese New Year update was out yesterday. So there's new skins, new emotes, new victory poses in the aesthetic arena, and also a new 6v6 capture the flag mode. But you can score. Apparently, it's a variant of traditional capture the flag. You can score like even if your flag is not at your base. The actual Chinese New Year of the Rooster starts Saturday, but characters like Mei and Diva have some pretty sick new costumes.
I mean, they could have called it Capture the Cock. Just saying.
There it is. I was waiting for the chat to say it, but no, Aaron's got us covered.
I got you covered.
Have you been here for the Chinese New Year in San Francisco, or did you go to the parade last year?
I did, yeah. It's pretty cool.
It's pretty nice, yeah.
On Market Street, straight up the city.
It kind of, it cuts through the Tenderloin and then goes down Market.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
It was a sight for sure. It's like those people had like fireworky looking things.
Fireworks,
dragons.
and they have those big dragons.
Yeah,
like
that's
the
what I
Kung Fu
was thinking.
schools, learn how to do that. Yeah.
Yes. In a game that probably won't get as much attention as, say, Resident Evil this week, or even Yakuza 7, is Tales of Berseria is also out as of yesterday. Jake Decker on our video team, that was his first written review. He gave it a 7 out of 10. He liked it. He said it's a good game for sure for that series. It might not advance the series in wholly meaningful new ways, but it's a good step in the right direction.
One of the things that this game, the issues that it has to deal with is the fact that it's a cross-gen title. So it's in Japan out on PS3 and PS4.
Right.
So the graphics do suffer a little bit in that regard. And there is some repetitive elements that kind of stick around, according to Jake. But he also made it sound really exciting from a different perspective, which is the series isn't just sort of light, joyful fantasy. There's some dark stuff going on, people doing mean things to accomplish their goals because they just don't care.
Sure.
So yeah, sounds pretty good, like a sleeper hit.
Yeah, he played a lot.
50 hours?
Yeah, and he also played the preview, or he used the review build a while ago to play a preview for 15 hours or something. We are getting to Yakuza. Udit Singh just said Yakuza is going to be lit.
Yup.
From everything I've heard, I think that's the case.
Yep.
We will get to that. We're devoting an entire section. One more thing that happened today. Prey from Arcane Studios, they released a new cinematic trailer and confirmed a release date of May 5th. Cinco de Mayo.
How much of this game are you going to play as a coffee mug?
As much as possible.
That's my primary question.
Jake, show me coffee.
Dang.
Sorry. I think you have coffee in that. I would love to sip that coffee and find out there's just vodka flooding it.
It is just.
I think the twist at the end is that you were always a coffee mug to start off with, and really you just turned into a human.
It looks awesome. I mean, it's really cool. I'm excited that Arcane has. So they have a studio down in Austin that's working on Prey, and then the studio in Lyon, France, which is they worked on Dishonored 2. So Harvey Smith headed that up. Raf Colantonio, the other kind of studio creative head, is leading up Prey. Obviously, Prey 2 was a thing by Arcane back in the day. They canceled it, but this is like the reimagining. It seems more like a Dishonored vein of first-person narrative kind of sim game with choice and consequence. But this is more horror, sci-fi, obviously, as opposed to Dishonored's more steampunk fantasy aesthetic. But it's also open. I don't know if it's a pure open world or more of a Metroidvania. This might be my most anticipated game of the year. There's Breath of the Wild and Red Dead Redemption 2 and major hits like that. But I've been replaying Dishonored 2 lately again. And we have some stuff planned with Arcane in the near future, which you can come back to at some point to watch between live streams and some bigger projects, which I'm excited about. But Prey might be my most anticipated game right now. I've been showing Rob Handler. I sit next to him now in the office now that Mary Kish left, and I've been showing him Prey footage. It's awesome. I can't wait for that game.
When are you going to make your Prey 2 fan art? Or I guess just Prey.
When am I going to make it, or when am I going to release the fan art I've already made for the past 3 months? Whenever you want it.
Can I get a hardcover edition?
Sure.
Thank you.
Next episode of The Lobby, you guys can ask for it, and I'll show everyone.
I'm still a little bit...
Show and tell, Mike.
Still a little bit tainted by the original Prey that I was shown at a Judges Week at E3.
Prey 2?
Prey 2, yeah. They showed it off. It was a space bounty hunter game originally. Kind of looked like the Star Wars 1313 thing we always wanted, and then that got canceled. So I'll have to change mindset into Portal.
Yeah, It does look super weird. Those aliens can also change into like trash cans, so you have to kind of hit trash cans to make sure it's not them. Yeah, Tyrion467 in the Twitch chat. The release date is May 5th for Prey. As of now, I doubt it's kind of close, creeping up. I don't know if it'll be delayed. Who knows?
I think it's probably a good idea to call every release date now a preliminary release date.
Probably, yeah. We've been
nature of
wondering if
delays.
like Andromeda and Red Dead will be delayed. Andromeda, I think it's too close now.
It's too close.
Yeah.
What's it? March is stacked now with the Switch and
Yeah.
all those games.
Tell me about it.
Horizon Zero Dawn's like 3 days before the Switch releases, which sucks because I'm really excited to take my time with that game if, it looks cool.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so that is kind of our newsreel for the day. Those are the minor things that happened. Not minor, but those are the smaller things that happened this week. I do have a giveaway. GameSpot's Twitter account will be tweeting soon. I think during the show. You can respond to it, and we will pick a winner Thursday. But being as that it's a giveaway, you probably want to know what you're tweeting about. Here you go. Turtle Beach gaming headset. Here, wait, I'll give it to
Nice.
Pete so you can get a closer look at it. I don't have a single camera on me. That's Pete's face. You will not get that with a giveaway. That might be a future one. Yeah, Turtle Beach Recon 320 headset. I think it's PC only. You would know maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, so PC only if you play PC games a lot, like a bunch of us here at the GameSpot office, then
You can
if
usually
you want
find
this.
a way.
Yes. So I'll try to remember at the end of the show to remind listeners again, but you can respond to GameSpot's tweet about the giveaway, and we will pick a winner Thursday, I believe. Shiva, she runs our Twitter account. She will be going through those replies and seeing who wins it. All right. Didn't mean to hit the table too hard.
Hopefully it's okay. I dragged my vodka mug across the table.
All right,
too
sweet.
hard. Yeah.
We won't spill this corrosive alcohol over this pristine table. Sweet. So let's get on to the show. A lot of people in the chat talking about Ghost Recon. Aaron, you and Jake Decker recently got the chance to play the co-op sandbox, which is the part I'm excited about for the game. And I think a lot of people, because at E3 we played the story mode. I think it was Timur, our UK editor, played it, was not too thrilled with it. But you also said the writing was kind of like frat boyish. Let's talk about the story really quick before we get into what you like about the game.
Okay, yeah, we played 4 hours. We played on the PS4 Pro. Just to clarify, the single player and the multiplayer are the same game. It's just whether you have your friends take over your buddies or not. So yeah, like Wildlands, there's 2 games here. There's 2 separate experiences. There's the one with your friends, which I loved and I thought was incredible. Mm-hmm. The sandbox was so good. And just the moments you have, the nail-biting moments you have where like you're about to die and like over the radio, your friend's like, I got this. And you see like a shot from a hilltop take out the guy who's about to kill you. And then your friend buzzes in with a little bird, like right as you get revived and you get in and then you peel out and like dodge a SAM and like go fly off and do something else. That part I loved and I thought was incredible. Like it delivered some of the things I've wanted to do with friends and like even games like Arma for a long time.
Sure.
But the barrier to entry was so high that I just could never get a group of friends together to do it.
Right, for how much it looks like they're going for realism in this. Well, are they? I mean, Ghost Recon has always been, for Future Soldier, obviously they went to the future. And now are they going for more realistic bent in this Colombia? Because you're battling like drug cartels. I wonder if it's going to be some sort of actual, social commentary on.
I mean, Future Soldier in an open world is accurate. Now, the story which you asked me about, I thought in the first 4 hours was just straight up bad. So you like land in Central America and everybody in Central America completely trusts you, which is weird because like there's a long history of American intervention and things going really shitty in Central America. And like on top of that, it's just super like Team America World Police, and it's not self-aware, and like everybody's just always cracking out of place dick jokes, and like it's that plot like, hey, if we just go kill all the drug dealers, everything's gonna turn out great in Bolivia. It's just the complete like lack of awareness of events in Central America and how crappy the war on drugs have been. And like, again, from a story perspective, there are ways that you can do this that are more impactful. For example, if the soldiers know that history, which they would if they're elite Delta operatives, and start questioning why they're there or if they're going to have any impact. Or you can go the Call of Duty like AC-130 mission where it's super clinical language to the point where these people come across as like disconnected from the people who they're killing. Like there's ways to write a game like this where in addition to the fun stuff you're doing, there's impact on the player. Like some of that is because this game is completely non-linear. So you do not have to do the story in any order. You can do it completely out of order.
Okay.
And like I get that puts developers in a bit of a bind where it's hard to build character when players can just screw off and do anything at any time.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like they have this challenge. They have this great sandbox.
They got motorcycles.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Wait, did you? Bolivia, South America. A few people are pointing out. What did you say? Central.
Did I say Central?
Yeah, I believe it's
Sorry,
South.
South America.
Yeah, just to clarify.
Um,
From what did you ever play? Did you play Future Soldier?
I did.
Did you play that co-op mode that was sort of like a horde mode, but every 5 waves you had to infiltrate stealthily and kill everybody? You had synced shots in that, so I'm wondering if it kind of feels like Future Soldier in an open world, but with a little more emergent gameplay.
I think it's exactly Future Soldier in an open world.
Okay. Which sounds cool because I actually liked Future Soldier more than I think the average person.
Yeah. And again, like I kind of thought the story was mediocre and the writing was kind of bad, but as soon as you get your friends in there, it's a great game. Like it is actually a really, really fun game. And it like, you know, again, like you see here, you're assaulting a base at night with a lightning storm. You are like using your night vision goggles. You're scouting with your recon drone. You are planning combined armed assaults with your friends, like coming in with little bird helicopters, dusting off on a rooftop, like dropping off a sniper on a hillside. That aspect of this game, like that's what made it the experience. That's what made the 4 hours for me.
Is it? What do you want to say for the actual? Is there PvP in the game? Adam Aim on Twitter. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Was asking if there will be PvP in this game at all. I'm assuming there will be some sort.
They haven't talked about it,
Okay.
So we don't know. But, you know, again, this game has a lot of potential. I think there's only a couple games out there that do combined arms multiplayer, like Battlefield. And I'm not saying that they would go that direction in the future with this game, but doing PvP in an open world environment, I think is, I mean, you know, people have modded Just Cause 2 and 3 to have multiplayer.
Sure.
And I think this game could also benefit from it.
Hold on, Just Cause 3 has multiplayer now in a mod?
They modded it in, yeah.
How does that work?
It's insanity.
Brief tangent. Yeah, I mean, by that, I mean, are there tanks flying around with mines attached to them and people flying into said tanks with their own mines?
It is Just Cause, so if you can imagine it.
Sweet. So I know what I want to do after the show now. Do you think Ghost Recon will turn out like The Division did last year, asks Gamer Votes? The game looks promising, but then again, The Division was also super hyped.
It's funny. As soon as The Division came out, we had a traffic spike in people searching for Ghost Recon Wildlands. Because I think we all know The Division, for a lot of people, was way too much of an RPG and not enough of a shooter. This game is a shooter, which I like. Mm-hmm. I love the gun customization. It had some of my favorite weapons and rifles. You have to go through the world and collect all the scopes and weapon parts, and then you take them in a gunsmith. But also, like, a boss showed up. There was a mission we did through a tunnel that was really fun. We started with backhoes, because you can drive anything in this game.
Right.
Except for llamas, which I can't hold against the devs, but I kind of wanted to drive a llama.
Jake Decker
so yeah, like
pretty...
right here. So that little cross, that was the boss. I accidentally killed him. He walked into a gunfight and I hit him with an errant like 320 grenade round and he died instantly.
How do you just walk into a gunfight? Man, where did I leave my phone?
It was all the cocaine. He was hopped up. Just wanted to see what was happening.
Did you guys see my croquet mallet? Oh.
Yeah.
Did you, Ricky N on Twitter was saying, did you get a sense of how big the world was? Yeah, obviously all open worlds now are big, but like, did you get a sense of it being pretty vast? Did you get a chance to look at the minimap or anything?
Yeah, we played 2 regions, like maybe a tenth of the game. We spent about 4 hours there. It's weird. The size of a world is usually a good talking point for developers, but it has pros and cons. Because the problem with an open world game is you have to fill it with stuff. Like this is a general Ubisoft challenge in all of their games. And if you make the game too big and you fill it with too much boring stuff, or you make too much stuff that distracts people from the main quests, or you sacrifice, the textures up close in this game weren't very good, but like the environmental effects at a distance, like lightning storms and flamingos, you're flying through a flock of flamingos with your helicopter, or, just the things in the distance were all gorgeous, but the things up close were kind of meh. So I don't know. Yeah, it's a massive world. They're saying it's the biggest one they've ever made. That comes with pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
More playtime, more things to do. The big question is always, how well did you fill that world with stuff, and how fun is that stuff to do?
Yeah, you can make Chicago and Watch Dogs 1, but if there aren't that many people, it won't feel like a city.
That's why I liked The Division. I thought it was kind of boring that way. It was this beautiful city with no people in it.
Yeah,
and I had no
dead
impact.
from the virus, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they justified that, but I don't know. I didn't find The Division too fun, but I haven't played since like what they've done, a year of updates, and now it's just a totally different game from what I hear.
Their survival DLC literally is a different game.
Right. Yeah, that's how I want to play the game when I said this all throughout the year in the office and also in my free time and also on the lobby. People who have been here a lot, I'm sure Goob Shuraya is probably has heard this before, but I've been meaning to play more of The Division since release day.
By the
which
way,
was almost a year ago in like a month.
Yeah.
I still want to. Like, me and you were the ones saying, like, oh, I love the post-apocalyptic aesthetic in New York. I love, like, that kind of ragtag group of people fighting back.
And I tried playing the game, and the mechanics just totally kind of screwed it up for me, unfortunately. Oh, well.
I think that game got sunk on just a general sense of unfairness. Like, I think the mechanics, even the cover mechanics were unfair to the players. You had no fine control over coming up and over cover. You get shot during animations going in and out of cover. There was no crouch. There was no prone.
Right.
Like, and then you get in the dark zone and other players with better gear would instantly kill you and not even take your stuff. Like, you didn't even want to take what I had. You just did it to be a dick.
Just give you a taste of their taint and move on.
Yeah.
So David Fox in the Twitch chat was just asking Aaron, how easy is it to kind of coordinate with your team? Because in the E3 demo, obviously Ubisoft they're all converging on one base at a time as a cohesive unit. Did it seem that easy, or like how does it kind of keep the team together in this massive open world? Can you have like one person in each corner?
So
from what you played,
there are actually really cool mechanics in the game that give you situational awareness. When each of you can pick a target. So if you're trying to do like a 4-person sync shot, each of you can designate a target, and everybody else on your team sees what target that you are aiming at, and they can also see if you're not aiming at that target. So if you all designate a target and somebody's about to initiate a countdown, which you can do with a button press or just count down yourselves.
Okay.
If you see a circle go over one of the guys who you've targeted, you know that your buddy's screwing around and not aiming at that guy. So it, like,
come on, Steve.
Yeah. Or like, yeah, I mean, that's a cool
the least military name ever. That's why they use last names. So you're not saying like, take the shot, Doug. Jake Decker, video producer here, who played the co-op with you, was just telling David Fox, if I'm not mistaken, who asked the question, that you get a notification when they want to do a mission, and then you can accept and fast travel.
Yeah, so we found the easiest thing to do was to break. There's 4 people in co-op. We broke off into teams of 2 and like talked between teams of 2, because honestly, sync shotting with 2 people is way easier.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always the chance of somebody to go full Leroy Jenkins when you're trying to do a stealth run. Because the stealth has a lot of good mechanics to it, and there's a lot of planning that can go into it. And if you screw it up, I was impressed with how hard the AI pushed back. It's like GTA. They'll kill you eventually. So you either have to do the stealth route or you have to have an exit plan.
Okay.
And how much you accomplish in the meantime, how much stuff you get done in the base is kind of up to you, and how stealthy or not stealthy or quick you decide to do it.
Okay.
So it was pretty easy with the right crowd.
Right.
When you're playing with other people.
Yeah, it seems like the Division kind of, it could be made or broken by who you're playing with. If you're playing with someone you know, or like Left 4 Dead or something, I don't know.
You can also just choose
games, now that I think of it.
Like, you can be in the same world with your friends and choose not to do missions with them.
Right.
So you can actually be just doing other stuff, and then it's like it was just left on the D-pad, join up and go do something together, and then go off and do whatever else you want.
Awesome.
That was pretty seamless and easy.
Cool. So in general, it seems like Wildlands, at least from your perspective right now, the co-op sandbox is where it's at, as opposed to the kind of more less than optimistic story.
Yeah, and again, we played the first 4 hours. There's a chance that maybe there'll be a story arc later on in the game that kind of points out shooting drug dealers doesn't solve problems.
Yeah, like the movie Traffic, Sicario, pretty much every movie about drugs, drug trade.
But the co-op is doing stuff that I love when you're with your friends.
Okay. Cool. You and Jake also did, I think it's up now on the site, on GameSpot, the 6 things you should know about Ghost Recon Wildlands. So people watching right now, you can go check that on the site right now. You can watch that for more in-depth conversation about the game, and let us know what you think. We'll do our best to look through the comments and kind of answer any other questions that weren't answered in the feature or on this segment. All right. Gonna move on to Yakuza.
Yes.
First.
The real reason everyone is watching this show.
No. Sorry, yeah, Yakuza 0. Sorry, we're having a bit behind-the-scenes snafu. Yes, Yakuza 0 is the one. I have Jean-Luc. I told him to queue up the live stream with you and Rob.
Which part?
Yeah, which part? I don't know. Jean-Luc, if you have something up right now that you want to roll, we can throw that up just to give people a sense of how Yakuza 0 plays
Roll that
out.
beautiful footage.
Yeah. It'll roll in a second. We'll keep talking until it does.
Roll it or I'll escape.
Here we go.
All right.
Here we go.
Oh, man.
Sapete, explain to me what's going on.
So this is a game about hardcore criminals who backstab each other. Look, the Yakuza series is something that's been like bubbling under the surface for years, and people really love it. And it seems like every game that passes, that crowd doesn't really grow for whatever reason. Maybe people have a hard time jumping in, but Yakuza 0 is the perfect entry point because it is a prequel to the original game. So you don't need to know anything about the characters. Maybe if you do, you'll appreciate the story more. But really, this is a good excuse to finally play Yakuza if you've been wondering about it. And this is the first one I've finished. And the games I've played before, like the same thing is present here, where you have this juxtaposition between very serious storytelling about criminals trying to, work their way through the ranks, right? But also be loyal and good friends to the people that matter to them. But also try to figure out, like, do they really matter to me? Are they my good friend? So there's a lot of sort of like betrayal and stuff that happens like that. But then when you aren't engaged with the story, you are doing one of two things. You are either fighting people, which is not one of the game's strong suits. It has this sort of very simple arcadey beat 'em up thing that would feel oh god, here we go. This beat 'em up component that feels like it belongs in like a late 90s, early 3D arcade game. Shit. All right.
Don't get derailed by the softcore porn about to come up.
Sorry, it's
and
hard.
I mean that in
the most literal way possible.
A very literal way.
And then you have these other pursuits where you can go around town and you can play arcade games. You can go out to restaurants. You can do karaoke. You can disco dance. You can watch essentially porn.
Right up close to this old CRTV.
Just chilling with your ashtray and your box of tissues and no shame.
CBS is going to come kick in the studio door
Seriously.
right now.
What? It's just an exercise video. What are you talking about?
She's on an exercise
She's
ball.
on an exercise ball.
I can't watch this. Anyway.
Stay away, look away from the TV. Pete. Keep going with what you're saying.
Precious,
Why did
my
you give this
baby
game?
eyes.
You gave this game an 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
So you were saying it's this weird blend of melodrama and just like taking itself
Just
not seriously at all.
absurdist comedy, right? So like, yes, you have these weird things that are like, okay, yeah, this is uncomfortable and strange, but
Okay.
it's phew.
She
Good
just
thing
blown
they're
up a balloon.
tissues. You
But-
did it for
It's the pursuits are not just like wacky things like softcore porn, right?
Yeah.
You also you get to meet the citizens in these recreations of cities in Japan. In this case, it would be a part of Tokyo and a part of Osaka. And these random citizens need help with certain things, right? Like one girl is sort of like, "Hey, I've been lying to my dad about having a boyfriend. You happen to look just like the guy I described." And this is when you're playing as a character who's like 6 feet tall, menacing with an eye patch. And she's like, "No, that's how I described my fake boyfriend to my dad."
Okay.
And so you have to like go sit down to dinner with her father and sort of like, and she's like, "By the way, he's very strict. He's very picky." And you have to like give him the right answers to make sure that you're not like blowing her cover. And but like the ending isn't just like, oh, you convinced the dad or you didn't. I won't spoil it, but there's a wrinkle that shows up. And that sort of thing is present in all of these little side stories. At first, it seems like just an excuse to introduce something stupid and silly, but it finds a way to just like endear itself to you a little bit more by making it about like an unexpected little twist.
So you've been telling me that you don't actually kill many people in this game, which is striking because I just watched him beat the shit out of someone with a bicycle and a giant urn.
Yeah, I mean, you will grind people's face into the pavement. You will, slam them skull first into the ground. Like, you just do all sorts of things that should easily kill somebody. But that's sort of, that combat falls into the more comedic side of the game than it does the serious story part. And I say serious because the story really does take itself seriously. It does not goof around at all, in no way, shape, or form, the same way the rest of the game does.
Yeah.
So it's this awesome little like palate cleanser and this nice balance. And the game is also really accessible in terms of figuring out, okay, what's my next destination for the story? You always know. So at any time you can just say, look, I'm going to screw around for a minute, and when you want to get back to the story, you can do it immediately. So it's a buffet of these various things that you can just easily get to and enjoy for what they are. And you'd think that it would spoil the other halves because they're so different, but it works in concert because you don't really have to do the funny stuff if you don't want to. It's there just for you to enjoy.
And this guy's about to cut his pinky off.
That's hilarious.
Oh, man.
While these guys watch.
So what's really interesting is that you look at these character models. Some of them, like this guy, is based on a real world actor. But anyway, these characters, all primary characters in the game, whether they're based off a real world character or not, look pretty good. But all NPCs look like crap. Look like up-res PS2 models with new textures.
Like outside of cutscenes?
Outside of cutscenes. But you know, yeah. And it's kind of jarring to an extent. But again, this game, it's an open world. It's not huge, but it's got a lot of depth to it. There are 100 side stories to follow, probably a dozen different mini games, which includes baseball, karaoke, bowling, darts, disco dancing, softcore porn, betting on
Throw
girls
that in there quick.
fighting. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
It's a game that doesn't really hide its roots as being rooted in late 80s Japan, and it's about Yakuza, which, it's not really that great towards women. So you have to be, you kind of have to roll your eyes a little bit and get over that fact. Doesn't make it right. It just sort of makes it one of those things depending on your tastes.
Sure. Whether it's authentic or not for the time period.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Whether
still.
it's worth
I mean,
being
I get
authentic.
that. It still made me uncomfortable at times. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not a prude by any measure, but there's still some scenes where it's just like, God damn, they really are treating women like shit.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's a really small part of the game. So I don't want to harp on that for too long. It's just important to consider if those things are important to you.
You might have mentioned this already, but I kind of got distracted by the game in general. Watching
boobies.
it right now, the softcore porn and the stomping heads. But it's Yakuza 0 because it's a prequel to the series.
Correct.
Before the first game, presumably.
Yeah, and there are, 6 main story games. There is Yakuza Dead Souls, and then so the remake of the first game, Yakuza Kiwami, is coming out this summer, and then we're getting Yakuza 6 down the road.
So that's 6 is the next sequel coming up.
Yes. So in order to play would it be 2, 3, 4, and 5, you need a PS2 and a PS3.
Mm-hmm.
Those games are only available on those platforms.
Yeah. It's weird that there's going to be a 6th game plus 0 plus the remake. Mm-hmm. Seems like a huge series, obviously. I've played Dead Souls, and it's got spin-offs like Dead Souls.
And Dead Souls is nothing like the main series, right?
I mean,
There's also one set in feudal Japan.
Yeah.
That unfortunately we're not going to get in the West. Unless, the thing is, Yakuza 0 is selling out on Amazon in most countries.
Really?
So this is, I think, the first one where people are kind of willing to jump in. So who knows? We might get that eventually. Maybe Sega Japan will, because honestly, Western sales really do dictate a lot of what happens in Japan in terms of game development now.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe the success of 0, the presumed success, will lead to more of these games being remade or being ported or localized.
Yeah, let's hope so. Again, Dead Souls is the first one I played and only, but 0 is kind of tempting just because of everything I'm seeing and hearing.
Dude, and I put 50 to 60 hours in this game, and my completion percentage was 16%.
Damn.
There is so much to do that if you really enjoy this, I mean, it'll last you 100 hours, if not more.
Damn, that sounds awesome. Aaron, have you played a Yakuza game before?
My experience with Yakuza is occasionally I look over my shoulder and see really weird shit going on Peter's monitor, and I'm like, he must be playing Yakuza again this year.
Yep. It's that time of year.
Whenever it cuts to a clean Xbox, I know that it's Peter playing Yakuza.
Pete's got one on hand.
I keep a small one in my pocket.
Clean Xbox?
The little pocket tissue thing.
Oh, nice.
That's actually a thing you get in the game. I won't go into it, no matter.
For your lunch breaks?
No, you collect. So there's a cop you meet who likes to frisk you, and he wants to make sure that you don't have any contraband on you. And there's people who are constantly handing out free samples like they kind of do in cities in Japan. And so you can just get pocket tissues ad infinitum, and you can just essentially use those to show the cop that you're a good person.
Gotcha.
No
All right.
weapons, no drugs, nothing like that.
Well, your full review is up on GameSpot now. You give it an 8 out of 10. You like this game a lot.
I do.
What are some of the drawbacks? Major ones.
Very inconsistent graphics. Combat that does grow a little bit repetitive, despite the creativity that you can have with the takedown moves. That's kind of it. It does a really good job at most everything else.
Rodrigo Guigname, I believe in the YouTube chat, is also pretty astounded that you only completed 16% after that much time.
I know. I mean, I finished the story. That 16% includes the story plus all side content. So I did, I think, 30 side stories and played about 10 hours or so of like the mini games, plus side story stuff.
Here's a mini game right here with a guy in tidy whities in an alleyway.
Oh yeah, so this is Walking Erection.
That's his name?
Yes. You meet him.
Oh, you're serious?
I'm serious.
That was a joke on my part.
You meet him, and he's
It's in the subtitles?
It's in the subtitles.
Walking Erection says...
So basically, you meet this guy, and he's like, "Hey, I just saw that you were in this club last night, so you must like porn like I do." He's like, "Trust me, if you ever need to find me, need some advice on how to get off, I'm everywhere."
Oh my
And he
God.
talks about how often he gets off. Like, yeah.
Wait, why is it Mr. Libido now? It keeps changing his name.
I think it's based on the context of what you learn about the character moment to moment.
What?
Yeah, because apparently his libido is like his pride because he can get off like 6 times a day.
So he just
and
does...
is never satisfied. He just
He
goes
goes
to
sit-ups and gets off all day.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's the life.
Yeah, good for him, man.
That's why he's always smiling.
Always
He's got a
smiling.
6-pack and he's just endorphins rushing through his body almost at all times.
among other things.
All right. Sweet. Enough of that. Yeah, go play that game, it sounds like. I want to now. Not because of the walking erection or the softcore porn. I want to for the melodrama and the serious things that make me sound like an intelligent human being,
That stuff is
not
actually
a very
good.
lowbrow person that... So thrown off. Yeah, seriously, go read Pete's review. It's on GameSpot.com.
Did you notice how the viewer count jumped, almost doubled?
We threw porn up. We found out the stream to...
Secret algorithm.
We found out the secret to getting people in our streams. We just put softcore porn on. Yeah. Seriously, CBS is going to like rappel into this room and take us out. All right, anyways, for the third time, go read that review. It's good. The game sounds awesome. I'm looking forward to playing it. All right, Aaron, this time for real, I'm going to bring Scott Butterworth on the set. The rest of the show is pretty much Resident Evil 7.
Sweet.
You didn't get to talk too much during Yakuza 0, but then again, why would we talk when we get such awesome
I
footage?
didn't need to talk with footage like that.
Yeah, no, it spoke for itself. All right, thanks for coming on and talking Ghost Recon, Aaron. I will see you later.
Cool. Thanks, Mike.
Later.
Did you play much Resident Evil 7?
Like an hour and a half in. I haven't played any more since we talked yesterday.
Okay, we got like a few segments talking about VR and talking about whether it should be your first game. Scott Butterworth, GameSpot editor, you reviewed the game for us.
I did, but let's just keep talking about Yakuza. That game looks amazing.
Yeah,
Have you played
yeah,
it yet?
yeah.
I haven't played Yakuza 0, but I do love that series. Like, Yakuza is amazing. So, if you haven't played those games for some reason, totally go play them. They're
Wake up,
ridiculous and amazing.
Play the games.
Yeah. That's like what the main focus of that was, why you should care about Yakuza if you don't. But it seems like you said it's sold out on Amazon. It sounds like a lot of people do.
I think it's still available in the U.S. on Amazon, but like Canada and a few other places. I think
It's big in
Australia
Canada.
sold
Aw,
out. Yeah.
good for Yakuza.
It's big in
Yeah, I
Canada,
know,
just
right?
like what's that? Bob Evans and what's the coffee place?
Oh,
Tim Hortons.
Tim Hortons, yeah.
Tim Hortons. I'm just naming guys. Tim Hortons and Yakuza 0. It's
You always
Canadian
do.
way.
Shout
And
out
Maple
to Tim
Leafs.
Hortons.
And hockey.
And hockey. Also hockey.
The national sport of Canada is not hockey. It is lacrosse, incidentally.
You would know that.
I know. Relax, bro.
Top cheddar.
Sports.
Yep. All right, sweet. So let's get right into it.
Yeah.
Scott, you gave Resident Evil 7 Biohazard an 8 out of 10 on your review.
I did.
It's just as good as Yakuza 0.
That's exactly what it's saying.
Very, very different ways.
No, in the same ways. That's what 8 out of 10 means.
Yeah.
I feel like there was very little sexual release in Resident Evil. I mean, at least for me. So
Not for not for me. I enjoyed Resident Evil 7 a lot.
So you've
Jesus
beaten it
Christ.
as well now, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
I did it in 2 sittings, which I don't recommend. But that's the thing about Resident Evil 7. Before I get your opinion, I think the pacing is really good. Like you mentioned in your review, some sections dragged, and I do agree. But even those sections, I really, really like that. You know, we're gonna avoid spoilers, but throughout the game, it's pretty impressive how Capcom kind of stuck to its survival horror guns
Yeah, totally.
throughout the game. It's not Resident Evil 6. It's not 5 or 4.
Yeah, not even a little bit.
It's 7, as the number denotes.
Yeah, even those sections that kind of drag, you still want to know what comes next, right? So you're still
Sure.
like, okay, I'm going to slog through this because I care, and because like whatever's next, it's like I want to get there.
Whether through gameplay or story, because for the first time in the series, spin-offs or numbered, the story's comprehensible.
Yeah.
It's
very much
far-fetched,
so.
but it's comprehensible.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a little outlandish in places because it's Resident
Sure.
Evil, and like it gets a little silly, but like it was never so silly that I was like, this is just dumb. It was just like, oh, okay, like I would accept the conceit and move on. And yeah, ultimately it is like, as far as Resident Evil is concerned, a very grounded story, a story that makes sense from start to finish. There is this cohesion to the entire experience, and it totally goes some places I did not expect, which was
Right.
great. It wasn't just a like I put it in the review, without spoiling too much, there is more to this game than what you have seen of it so far.
For sure. Yeah, because right now it's just that very Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe. There are some clear influences from other like specific horror franchises that goes into this, and we just to pimp it, I'm gonna do it a lot because it's really good. Tamor Hussein, UK editor, and Adam Mason over in the UK. In collaboration with a couple people here who helped. They did one of our GameSpot Studios documentary series, the 2-part series on making Resident Evil 7 and also just Resident Evil series influence as a whole on the horror genre. We talked to a bunch of people that worked on Resident Evil 7, which is kind of a all-star team of past Resident Evil devs. Masachika Kawada's on it. Takeuchi worked on Resident Evil 7, and the series is really good. You should go watch it. It's on GameSpot. It's on YouTube. Tamor did a really good job. Behind-the-scenes stuff, just a lot of insight. Spoke to Dan Pinchbeck from the Chinese Room, who made Amnesia Machine for Pigs.
He was a great interview. I like
Definitely,
listening to his responses.
And also someone from Alien Isolation. His name escapes me right now. He was like head on Isolation. I wish I knew his name. But also Matthias Warsch from Dead Space. How Resident Evil 4 and also the earlier games influenced Dead Space. But yeah, go check that out. There's my first of probably several plugs for that series. It's fantastic. You should watch it.
Absolutely. And we've actually done a few series like that, but like this may be the best one. It's
really
really
good,
genuinely some of the best content we've put up.
It's really good.
If you like Resident Evil, it is especially awesome.
I mean, and what's interesting though is I think Resident Evil, and part of the excitement around returning to survival horror, right, and getting back to the series roots, it is just such a recognizable name. It is like an inescapable part of gamer culture at large. So even people who aren't necessarily horror fans, Resident Evil fans, I think might actually get something out of that series just because of how influential the early games were. I mean,
like Gears of War? I mean, there you go.
Gears of War and Dead Space and all these other franchises, horror and otherwise, absolutely were influenced by Resident Evil.
Definitely. And it's weird that it dropped off. I mean, it's not weird. It dropped them and Silent Hill dropped off the map, kind of the two flagship horror series. And, now Resident Evil 7's back in a good way. It's getting pretty positive reception across the board.
My 8 was on the low end for most of the scores that I was seeing.
Right, I think I saw 1.7. I forget where it was, but everything else was pretty high. So just to go back to your review in terms of to get into the details, what do you like? I don't know. Walk us through what your experience was. It after you finished the game. What was kind of going through your head? I mean, like I said, I did it in a day, which it's like a 12-hour game. They're saying, give or take an hour.
Yeah, I mean, I could see beating it. I mean, I think you said you beat it in like 7, or 7.5.
So the save time was 7.5. I think I spent like 9 on it.
Okay, that sounds.
But I also, I played 4 hours of this for the Resident Evil 7 studios to help out with in Japan.
So you kind of knew some of the puzzle.
So that section, I kind of knew what I was doing.
Gotcha.
But there are puzzles in this game. They're not that hard, but like navigating the mansion and other places is part of what's going to take a little bit. But the backtracking worked, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's not too much of it, and it's like 90% of it is optional. It's basically, oh, hey, you now have a key that opens a door that you walk past. You want to go get some more items? Like, go for it. Go back and get that stuff. But you don't need it. It'll just help you.
Sure.
So I think that was a wise choice on their part. By and large, it is a relatively linear experience. I mean, there's actually sort of a hub and spoke structure to certain parts of the game where you can, shoot out and do something and come back to your little like safe spot and then go out again and do something. But still, like the series of events, there's really only one next thing to do at any given time. So it really drives the experience forward, makes it very clear what you need to be doing. So yeah, I didn't mind the backtracking at all. It really was just the survival horror. Like, hey, if you need more stuff and if you're patient, go back and get it, or just forge ahead and take your chances.
Sure, to use an overused term, kind of Metroidvania aspects or Castleroid, as Pete said. Yeah,
I think that's
else
a
at
fair.
GameSpot came up with that term.
Castleroid?
I can't take credit
Metroidvania, I think Jeremy Parrish, the journalist, popularized it, but I think in a recent thing about Symphony of the Night, which actually has its 20th anniversary in March, I think we're going to do something fun with that. He was saying he didn't actually coin it. It was someone else at US Gamer or something at the time.
It was probably at that time for him 1UP.
Right. Oh yeah, because you're former 1UP as well, as Justin is.
Yeah, I didn't work that close with Jeremy.
Gotcha. Anyway, but yeah, so in terms of backtracking and opening up new areas based on new items and whatnot. It's actually the game itself. Anytime I backtracked, it felt there's still more items I hadn't picked up, or there's always something going through my head in terms of, do I want to use this chem fluid to make handgun ammo, or should I save it for health if I think I'm coming up on a boss fight or something? It's that survival, which the item management, which hasn't really been present in Resident Evil since 4, but in a big way since like the first 3 games.
Yeah, totally. So inventory management definitely makes a big return. And I mean, it also just that enhances the tension in a lot of ways, right? Because, you know, one enemy swipes at you and like it's not going to kill you, but just that one hit hurts so much more because you're like, now I'm going to have to spend a healing item to recover my health, and like I don't know when I'm going to get another one. So even little moments that aren't going to kill you or force you to restart are suddenly way more high stakes just because of the inventory management, because everything is so scarce.
Right.
Can I ask you a little bit of a question?
Yeah.
So I'm about an hour and a half into the game, and it seems like health items have been pretty plentiful.
So
Does that continue?
I will say that, so the hardest difficulty you can play on out of the box is normal,
Right.
and you eventually unlock something harder. But on normal, I feel like the game is consistently generous enough that if you are patient and vigilant, you will always find what you need.
Yeah.
Like if you're just blazing through, you will die and run out of items. But if you are taking your time and you're meticulously searching rooms, you will find enough stuff.
Because that is what I'm doing.
You will be okay.
Yeah, I am like turning over every stone just to make sure.
I would say that on normal, there's a pretty good balance of being tense without being punishing.
I still feel like I don't want to use my items, but frankly, like when I do, and then I'm like, okay, I'll find one in the next room, and it's like, oh, all right, I guess I shouldn't have cared so much.
I do think that drops off a little bit the further you get in, but not significantly. It's not like you reach a point in the game where it's like suddenly you have nothing and you're just screwed.
Sure.
Ha ha ha! Like no, but I do feel like the frequency does decline as you would expect.
It should.
The later you get in the game, the more difficult it's going to be. The higher the stakes, the higher the tension.
The better you should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do get better. Like you sort of learn how to fight the enemies that you face in the game, and like that was actually sort of one of my issues with the game, that I feel like just sort of the basic enemies that you encounter through the game could have been a little more capable. Once you sort of understand them, you realize like I can just run away from these idiots, like whatever. Not always the case, but if you see them from a distance, you're like, I'm not going to fight you. I don't, and you can just kind of run away. And
how persistent are enemies?
Depends on the enemy.
There's the gamey thing that if you play a lot of Resident Evils, you know that they'll abide by the rule that if you're in a save room, they won't go in. So I
know that so much, but like there's some, you know, like in the manor you start off, right? There's a lot, like especially around the kitchen and the dining room, the living room, like there's a lot of like space there that are connected. I know one person character will follow you relentlessly, but
there are some sections that are more like Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, kind of a persistent threat, not throughout the game though. I'd say by and large, most of the game, there are enemies tied to certain areas.
And will they, like, so if I leave that area, will the enemy still be there when I go back?
So here's what I'll say. I think that Resident Evil 7 does a really excellent job of seamlessly stitching together a bunch of different components, and you don't realize that you've actually transitioned from one section of the game into the next section.
Yeah.
And different sections are governed by different enemies and different sort of like AI in a way. So there will be a section where there's almost a tyrant-like character who will just relentlessly come after you, and there are other sections where it behooves you to be a little stealthier just because that's what's going to work for you.
Yeah.
And again, it's not explicit. It's not like, you know, a big prompt comes up and says, hey, you need to be stealthy here, but you just sort of, as a character, intuitively understand what's happening around you, and suddenly the gameplay will pivot slightly, and now you're in this other type of section. So really depends on the portion of the game that you're in.
Okay.
It is really fluid in how it goes from one type of horror, like jump scares, to another, which is more dread and being chased, and then to another one where you're like, do I want to use this advanced handgun ammo to kill this enemy, or do I want to save the shotgun for the next room? Are there going to be booby traps in this room? It does... You put it really well. It does transition between those without you really realizing it. It makes it feel like one cohesive game rather than these separate sections, like these kind of bite-sized, you know, like mini chapters, which it kind of is. But it doesn't. There's no like there's not like a chapter marker. Like, now you're done. It just fluidly moves to the next thing. I will say that just in general, variety is one of the core strengths of Resident Evil 7. Again, certain sections kind of drag after a while because you end up doing similar things from start to finish. But in between, you will find all kinds of different subtle shades of horror gameplay. So it's nice that there are options. It's nice that there are different approaches and different styles of gameplay, all sort of under the same banner, all presented in a seamless way. Sure. There were people asking questions about the DLC. Did you guys read too much about that?
Yeah, the banned footage DLC.
What is this about? Do you know?
So we have to check the site to get like exact details, but basically it's going to be just sort of standalone story segments. So there are going to be 2 packs of banned footage Pack 1, Pack 2. I believe the first one's out in just a few weeks. The next one's out a few weeks after that. So they're both scheduled to come out relatively soon, and both contain 3 different things. I think like 2 sort of story-driven components and 1 sort of fun bonus mode in both cases. I don't remember exactly what the content is, but all of it is sort of a supplement to the game. It's not really like, and here is the next chapter of the story. Like here is the, epilogue to the game. It's stuff that kind of slots into the universe and is like just purely optional. Will sort of flesh out other characters that you interact with, or other, stuff that happens prior to the game, things like that.
Sure.
That's my understanding of what's happening.
So Photoshop Pro in the YouTube chat was just asking, and I actually don't want you to answer this fully because I think that could lead into spoilers, but it does give me a good question. He says, was the demo part of the story, and by that I'm assuming in the beginning hour demo, there's also the Lantern demo, or is the full game a continuation from the demo? I think that's spoiler territory, but you were talking yesterday about how you thought it was really cool about the pre-release marketing, how that plays a part in the story. Can you talk about that without spoiling anything?
Not really. However, I am absolutely.
Terms,
I'm already working on a feature that I would. So when you see this feature hit the site, I would recommend beating the game before you watch this. But I do think that the way Capcom handled sort of their pre-release build-up to this game in a really interesting way, that's not unprecedented, but is something that I think is truly remarkable, and actually, I totally applaud the way that they approach things.
Yes.
So if I really explain what I mean, I will be spoiling things, but I do think that if you were paying attention before the game came out, if you're playing the demo, that you're going to find some really cool stuff in the game, and you're going to be very happy that you were paying attention before the game came out.
Awesome. So in terms of your review, quick bullet points before we move on to the next section.
Yeah.
Good, bad, overall thoughts.
Good variety, good return to horror. I think it did an excellent job. I do think it was paced well. Some of the boss fights were really amazing, like true Resident Evil boss fights. The story is actually very good, surprisingly good. It avoids a lot of pitfalls that it could have easily fallen into, and instead does something kind of unexpected. And a lot of the twists are predictable, but it's still cool to see them play out. Bad would be, I do think, like I said, certain sections kind of drag, where it's just like, okay, I just want to get through this. I don't actually care about what I'm doing. I just want to get to the next thing. That happens a few times. A couple of the boss battles were actually more annoying than intense, I think is the way I phrased it.
Definitely.
There's one in particular where you're given a weapon just for that fight. And I kept dying over and over until the game said, by the way, you can do a power attack if you hit these buttons. And as soon as it told me that, I won the fight.
I actually need to tell you something else about that fight that someone from Capcom told me about.
Oh, yeah?
That there's something else that makes that fight really easy.
Really?
And I didn't know about it. I didn't know about what you told me until, inside baseball shit.
Yeah,
But
well, we just don't want to spoil things.
Cool.
I think that those are the big negatives. Oh, I also wish they had done a little more with puzzles. There are a couple really great puzzles in the game. I just wish there had been more of them.
Cool. So go read Scott's review. It is up on GameSpot. He gave it an 8 out of 10. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Liked it a lot, as a lot of outlets seem to be corroborating that. And myself as well. It's a great game. Pete, probably play more of it soon, I would assume.
Yeah, I like it a lot so far. Cool. It's definitely like a nice change of pace.
Cool. And we got a few more Resident Evil segments. But again, watch our Reviving Resident Evil series. Tamar Hussein, the UK editor, did a great job with that behind the scenes. We have a lot of guides going up soon, like what the beating the game will unlock, how New Game Plus works, a guide for finding antique coins, these things that unlock more abilities and weapons.
How Resident Evil ties into the broader universe.
Yes, which we're actually about to get to in a little bit.
Cool.
So we're talking more about how Resident Evil fits into the Resident Evil franchise. But for all intents and purposes, it seems like Capcom has a winner on their hands, and maybe they're kind of, the series seems like it is making a comeback, which is great for everyone. So go check those out on the site and leave your thoughts in the comments. We'll do our best to peruse them and answer any questions we might not have answered here. Cool. Now I want to focus specifically, you raised the idea of doing this segment, Scott, because Jean-Luc Seipke, who's manning the TriCaster now.
Right now, as we speak.
Yes.
He's back there in the wings.
He's working on a feature. Well, so he put up something about our reactions to Resident Evil 7 in VR, but he's also working on a feature. He played through the entire game for the first time in VR. So we were all kind of thinking that's kind of unprecedented, right? Maybe not unprecedented, but we've all played a lot of VR games by this point. Pete, you've been following VR for a long time, and last year was when all 3 headsets released, at least the bigger headsets. And Resident Evil 7 seems kind of like, Scott, you said it was a kind of watershed moment for VR because it's one of the most well-known AAA franchises. And then you have people on PSVR, probably the most accessible headset, I would say. They're playing through this game, this horror game, seems like a pretty big moment. So we want to talk about what kind of what Resident Evil 7 means for VR, PSVR specifically, but maybe even like broader terms. Did you get the chance to play in VR yet?
No, I haven't yet. I mean, I've played a lot of horror first-person stuff.
Sure.
So.
I mean, so there are the obvious comments you can make. It's more immersive. It's probably scarier. It is scarier in this case. But I think this game really, really nails the VR because, well, there's the controls. You could see Mary Kish, former producer, as of last week, on screen right now. You're aiming. There's an option, and I highly recommend it, to aim with your head. The reticle follows where you're looking. There's Nick Margarita shitting his pants, probably swearing a lot.
There's a lot of swearing in that video.
Yes, we had to beep a lot of that. Yes, and then there's myself. There is
legs crossed.
Yes, just casual.
I'm cool. No worries.
There's
Just
something
killing some monsters. Don't worry about me.
There's something to be said about the fact that this is such an atmospheric, tonal game, right? It's very much. It looks like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, just dilapidated mansion, kind of like dank corridors. Haha, dank. Very, very eerie, and it works. It's not just this. Here They Lie was another PSVR demo that comes to mind, and I don't think it worked really well. It was just this, I don't know, Capcom nailed it. What was your experience with VR in Resident Evil 7, Scott?
So it's kind of a mixed experience for me. So I will say that, like watershed moment was definitely the term I used, and I think it is. I mean, this is a huge franchise that really takes VR seriously. I mean, you have a huge set of options that you can choose from.
Sorry, Goobshoe Raya is tearing Nick Margarita apart.
Called Nick a swamp goblin.
That was mine. I called him once.
Good.
Yeah, Goob, you're my boy Goob. I thought swamp goblins feel so much more at home in this setting.
Sorry,
Nick Margarita is a New Jersey mud punk. Moving on. Sorry, Scott.
For
So
anybody
sorry.
that hasn't seen our VR reactions video, it's very
sorry,
good.
I'm so sorry.
It's
we have
very good.
the chat up right in front of Scott. You were speaking so intelligently, and then all of a sudden we talk about swamp goblins.
Nah, Swamp Goblins is way better.
Sorry, continue.
No, all I was gonna say is that I really admire that they went all out. Like, they really took VR seriously with Resident Evil 7. You have a ton of different options that are designed to, minimize any ill effects that you may experience while playing VR. You can adjust it so that hitting the right stick moves the camera in degrees, which for a lot of people actually helps with motion sickness.
Super customizable.
Yeah, but you can also make it smooth. You can make it so that crouch happens automatically, or that the camera will move down, and all kinds of options like that. So whatever works for you as a VR player, you can probably create a set of settings that will best accommodate your needs as a VR player. That is something I haven't seen from a franchise this huge. I mean, this is a big, 10 to 12 hour AAA experience that really goes all in on VR, and that hasn't really happened yet.
It's kind of interesting to me how they're not really like trying to like hammer it into people's heads that like play this in VR. You know what I mean? Like,
I actually appreciate that, but
that's what I mean. Like, it just seems to be this nice little. Like, because, when you push something so hard, people feel like, all right, well, that's kind of a burden. Like, I feel like I have to do this. You know? But the VR seems like the icing on the cake of this whole game.
Yeah. By the way, did you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what? It's actually really good. So that's some great icing, like top-notch icing.
That's what's crazy. It used to be one of the flagship series of video games in general. It's got, like movies, an entire like franchise built around it now. Kind of weaned off with 5 and 6 and recent titles. But the fact that I would actually recommend playing this iconic sequel in VR over just standard on standard TV, that's pretty huge. And it's
a first.
And it looks not as good as like an ACTV would, but it looks good though. And like having headphones, there were scares. Like, we did the section for that VR reaction video, and there's a part with like this piano. I don't want to spoil too much, but you kind of saw some of the gameplay. That part I played again right after. I was not scared. I knew what was coming, but like even before the jump scares, the tone that you get with the headphones on, and just again, I don't want to like sound like I'm just saying these really trite things about VR that have already been said millions of times, but it really, like, rather than guiding a character up these stairs to this old attic where I know something bad's gonna happen, I am walking up in this creepy house to the second floor where I know something bad's gonna happen, and just that there's less removal than there is when I played the next day.
When it occupies your entire field of vision, when you're wearing headphones, can't hear anything else, all of your senses, all of that input is coming directly from the game. There is nothing else to pull you out of it, right? Like, you're not seeing the edges outside of your TV. You're not hearing, car horns honking on the street outside. Like, you are only receiving input from the game. And it's hard not to be more horrified when you are just that much more immersed in it. I mean, horror is really a perfect choice for VR because VR is all about immersion, right? So it is kind of a perfect fit in a lot of ways, which is another reason to applaud Capcom for doing such a good job in their execution, because they really had an amazing opportunity and they seized it. Like, they didn't let it, just kind of half-ass it or try to cram it down people's throats. They're just like, okay, we're going to do it right. We're going to make it an option, and we're going to let people experience it if they want it. And you know what? It's really good. I will say the flip side to the coin that I was going to mention, just in terms of content, I feel like there are certain sections of the game where there's no point in wearing a headset.
Yeah.
Like, you are kind of just walking around trying to collect stuff, and VR doesn't enhance anything at all. And there are moments that I feel like were explicitly designed for VR, where like an enemy will get right in your face in a scripted moment or things like that, where it's like, okay, you did this for VR. But it's not, like, it never took me out of the experience. Like, when those moments came, I wasn't like, oh, just pandering nonsense. The
phone part was weird, like looking over.
Yeah, you
the
look
phone
at your
is hovering
disembodied hand, like, hanging in the air. It's kind of weird. So I can't imagine playing the entire game in VR, but certain sections will be amazing. So that's sort of my take on VR. Like,
I love the fact that you can actually hear something behind you and turn your head to look.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if
actually
you
play a
heard
lot
me.
of it
Turn your
standing.
head to look. Sorry, I just looked away from the mic.
I found that playing standing up and being able to actually like fully turn to the sides was a really cool way to do it, as opposed to like being seated.
Goob, do I do that often? Do segues to bad 90s movies? What? Bedazzled was the one, and it wasn't a bad segue. It was perfect.
I like how
Watch
Nick,
Dogs 2 it was Watch Dogs 2, but with Brendan Fraser.
I like how Nick thinks a really good comeback is calling you off-topic Mikey.
He has
compared
nicknames
to
for me.
Swamp Goblin.
Yes, like that hurt, Nick.
Off topic, Swamp Goblin.
I'll leave Goob to the insults to Nick Margarita. Continue, Goob, please. But yes. So do you have any intention of playing a lot of the game in VR? You do. Yeah, it's. I would recommend playing this game in VR over standard. It's fantastic. I really like it, and I want to do a full playthrough. My next playthrough, I want to do the Madhouse difficulty in VR. So Madhouse enemies are faster in different spots, and also just more powerful and more health. And they wear bras. They have brassieres on. They wear pantaloons too.
We were
It's a
talking
very
about,
weird
like,
aesthetic.
Scary pantaloons though, like horror themed pantaloons.
Yes,
It's a madhouse.
and also like items are sparser.
And sparser. And you have
Darren
limited
Sparsers.
saves, or I think you can. I think
No.
it's like-
You carry around cassette tapes like ink ribbons, which is awesome. I'm gonna play Madhouse in VR, and you also. But if you you have to beat the game to unlock that difficulty. Kelly Plagge newest associate editor, is working on like a kind of not a guide, but just like a roundup of what you get when you beat the game. So we're also making it spoiler free, so go check that out. We're doing a lot of Resident Evil stuff this week. I'm trying to plug as much as possible. Hopefully, I'm not forgetting anything.
So my big question though, for like related to VR and Resident Evil, is: do you guys think that this is going to encourage other developers to invest these kind of resources into VR in their own games? I mean, is this like the start of something bigger, or is it going to end up being kind of a one-off? Like, oh, Resident Evil did it, and that was kind of it.
Well, so I think it's interesting if you look at like what Square Enix was trying to do with Final Fantasy 15, with that thing that hasn't even come out yet that looked just ridiculous.
I played
E3.
it. I played it at E3. It was bad.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it's gotten better since like 7 months ago, but it was bad.
Right. So that might dissuade certain people, but I feel like Resident Evil is big enough, and the VR, according to you guys, is so good that it has to sort of have an effect on outsiders. It has to inspire them to say, not everything is going to be Final Fantasy 15 in VR, right? Resident Evil is an example of how, yes, it can work, but we can also take a risk on something as long as we don't like risk the reputation of the series on that. Like, it has to coexist, I think, with the traditional experience.
Certainly at the beginning.
Yes, at the beginning, yeah. I think forever, though, you're going to see people who don't want to do VR.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, I love VR, but I still don't opt to use it if I don't have to. You know, it's rare that a game comes along like Thumper or maybe Resident Evil 7 where I'm like, no, this is the only way to play the game.
Sure.
That you should play the game. But I think people have to recognize outside that, yeah, this is proof of concept.
Certainly seems like it.
So last weekend, just one more question before we move on to the next section. Jeremy Zaal, he told me how to pronounce his name.
Sick.
He was asking me on Twitter, we kind of touched on this, but I do want to, now that we're talking about VR, were you legitimately scared in Resident Evil 7? Or was it more like survival horror scared? I mean, aside from jump scares, was this game scary to you? Because Nick Margarita and like Mary and Jake and myself were scared at a few parts, and I'm pretty well versed in horror. There are a few parts, especially in VR, that really scare me. But Jeremy was asking, what was your experience with that?
I will say that this is not the scariest game I've ever played.
Okay.
However, it is at points certainly horrifying. I think this game relies more on atmosphere and tension than on explicit scares, right? And jump scares and other types of scares. I mean, they come in a lot of flavors, but really, it is a game about tension more than anything, and sort of instilling dread in you and making you feel like you're in this inescapable situation, and it's just so oppressive, and like you just can't wait to get out and like get this weight off your chest, and that's more what it's about. Like, it's more about dread and panic that the atmosphere induces than it is about, haha, you're terrified and you're going to scream out loud. Like, it's a subtler scary to me.
Yeah, so what you're describing, what I've felt, is what I felt the first time I played Resident Evil as a 11-year-old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
98.
Already had a
96.
beard at 11. You wouldn't believe it. I've seen pictures.
It was bigger.
And
My
glasses.
beard's always been the same length. It's just my body has grown. And
Grew into the beard,
into
yeah.
it. It's like ears and nose when you're older. No, those never stop growing. Opposite. Sorry. Continue.
Go on.
Continue.
So how would you compare this to, say, your first experience playing the original Resident Evil? Does it feel like that same kind of dread and tension? Because that's what I'm getting, I think.
Yes and no. I mean, I would say that fundamentally the emotions that you experience are extremely similar, but I also think the game elicits them in a slightly different way. I talked a little bit in the review about how I feel Resident Evil 7 draws from more modern horror games. I mean, the first-person shift is easily the best example of that, turn towards modern games. So people who played Outlast, people who played Alien Isolation, people who played Amnesia, I feel like it creates tension and dread in a similar way to those games. And it does feel like a Resident Evil game to me for a lot of reasons, and that is partially one of them. But I also feel like it is more in line with our modern expectations of what a horror game can do. So in my mind, this is absolutely a Resident Evil game. It fits within that universe nicely. It evokes a lot of the same feelings that the early games did, but it also comes from a newer place as well.
Sure.
So I think your mileage may vary. I think it's going to depend on the player and kind of what you get out of it. That's a really empty thing to say because, of course, it will depend. But to me, it's a Resident Evil game for sure. And the dread that you feel is similar to the dread that those early games evoked.
Cool. So, there you have it. I recommend playing that game in VR, if possible, if you have a PSVR. It's awesome. It's fantastic. I really enjoyed it. We have Jean-Luc Seipke is putting up a more in-depth thing about his VR playthrough. We also have the VR reactions that a bunch of GameSpot staff kind of were brave enough to try out. You can watch Nick Margarita get scared a lot because he's kind of a child. Yes. Anyway.
But an adorable, lovable child.
Moving on to our last segment, and it's also about Resident Evil. We were thinking about doing this, and then Luigi Wagner on Twitter, he asked a good question. Is Resident Evil 7 a good place to start for newcomers to the series? I will start answering that. I think it is. I think, this is where it gets tough to not spoil things, whether it fits in the traditional Resident Evil storyline. We can kind of talk about that in general terms, but this game is such a different experience than any other Resident Evils in some ways. In a lot of ways, it's very much, a return to form, we keep saying, right? The survival, the items, the fact that it's very, kind of a consolidated setting that you're going to learn from spending more time in it. It's also more, atmospheric and tone and, dreadful, like you were saying. But I think this is removed from the storyline of the franchise enough that you could come into this and it might not make you appreciate the story of the earlier games because it's nowhere near as just convoluted and weird and melodramatic, which I love about the older games. But I think Resident Evil 7 is a great starting point. It's a good way to... It's weird because if you play this and then go back to the other games, it's going to feel like two separate series except for a few Easter eggs. But of course, if you know the series well, you're going to see certain design tropes that have made their way over in a good way. I don't know, Scott, what do you think? Would you recommend someone that's never played a Resident Evil game?
I'm going to answer this in a really diplomatic, non-answer kind of way.
Come on.
So here's my response.
Diplomatic Scott.
Here we go. Here it is. I don't think that you need to have played older Resident Evil games in order to enjoy Resident Evil 7.
Right.
So if you have never played Resident Evil, you can play Resident Evil 7 and you will enjoy it basically as much as somebody who has played Resident Evil.
Okay.
That's my response.
Okay.
Because I don't want to spoil story stuff.
Right, yeah. Pete, you're about an hour and a half in, so
So what?
What'd
Look,
you have for breakfast?
Cheerios, banana, and 2% milk.
Ooh,
I know.
2%, man.
Very specific.
Yeah. Well, what Scott said. I
Wait,
think-
in one bowl?
Yeah.
All
I slice
three?
up the bananas, I put on the Cheers, and I pour some milk.
What else what are you having for lunch?
I don't know.
Tussles Nick's hair as he walks out the door.
Because his pet.
Have a good day, champ. No, I was thinking like more like his kid. Just call back to the kid joke.
Poor
But pet works
you
too.
sweet bastard.
I'll be back later, hun. I have to feed the swamp goblin and change his litter. He's tracking. He's
So
just
swamp
guard-
goblins use litter boxes. I'm learning so much today.
It's a
It's
weird.
like an anthropological journey.
Nick is
today.
rolling in his chair.
you
His
have to
desk.
add water and mud to the.
Yes.
Damn, good answer, Peter. Rob Handlery really liked your off the cuff your breakfast remark.
We should probably let you actually answer the question.
What was the no? I think what you said makes a pretty good point. Like the fact this game really does not try to like make a huge deal about being part of the Resident Evil universe means that you don't really need to have those connections to the past. And the sort of modern horror, as you were describing in the last segment, also makes sense. So it really is a fresh start. Like it feels like something that is both Resident Evil, but it doesn't need to be Resident Evil.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that have played more recent horror games, which at least first person, aside from Alien Isolation, have been on the indie scene, right? It's Amnesia. There's
More so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think
Slender.
obviously like again to plug it one more time in our reviving Resident Evil series, we have an entire episode. The first episode is about how the decline of Resident Evil and Silent Hill, the flagship horror series, led to this increase in horror from indie developers who could take more creative chances because they didn't have the risk involved, the overhead and the actual like AAA money, like budgets involved. But I also really like that. I think Resident Evil 7 takes what made those indie games good, and I'm just using indie as a broad term. They're not all indie games. You have like Outlast 2 coming up. Red Barrel that's an indie developer, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, they're technically independent in that they are not owned by a larger parent
Sure.
company.
That term gets indie is just like thrown
Say
around, but I think people get what I
non-AAA.
mean. Not AAA. I think Resident Evil 7 takes what made those non-AAA horror games great and also combines it with what made Resident Evil originally great in a way that I think this is the best introduction to the Resident Evil series. I think if someone has not played Resident Evil up till this point, as much as Remake and Resident Evil 2 are two of my favorite games in any genre, I don't think I would recommend those first. I think you'll have a deeper appreciation of those if you can see how it works in the modern day first.
7 might also set you up to not like those games though, because
They are restrictive.
they're restrictive and like you were saying, it's pretty campy. It's pretty. It requires a lot of like esoteric like knowledge of characters and events and.
But I mean, if you're playing Remake, that's when they were introduced.
What was?
The characters.
No, I know, but I'm saying it's by and large though, it's the campiness.
Sure.
It's the
Yeah.
campiness that will make people be like, "This is
Right.
You were almost a Jill sandwich.
Yeah, this is a good
Man, it's I think it will at least show you that these kind of things can work. Oh yeah, did you see? Did you hear? Tim Turry and I from Capcom played Resident Evil yesterday on a live stream, and he was using your account because you had the saves that we wanted to start from, and he kept getting you a bunch of bronze trophies. So I'm like, you're racking up the bronze trophies for Peter Brown. So Tim's like, oh, Peter Bronze. So we were talking about that last night.
That is pretty good.
Pete Bronze, reviews editor at GameSpot.
I need a tan if I'm going to live up to that moniker.
Pete Bronze.
More like Pete Saran Wrap.
Pete Self-Tanner. Pete Self-Tanner Browns.
I am transparent.
We have a very pasty crew on
Yes.
the lobby. Thankfully, this table is white, so hopefully the contrast makes us look less pale in
makes me
comparison.
disappear.
Or it reflects up at us and makes me look even milkier.
It's definitely possible.
Milky is a disgusting way to
a
describe
weird-
someone's skin.
Yep.
Don't.
Moist and milky.
When we break this video, I'm deleting that.
Milky,
Please do.
milky stubble.
At least it's not like you look very marshmallowy today. Pete,
Oh.
you kind of do.
I always do.
Pete Bronze.
Mike's getting antsy.
So I think I personally think this would be a good introduction to the series. I don't know if you're gonna like love Remake going back to it, but I think it'll show you how those kind of design tenets can work in a modern day horror game. I think in that
democratic answer of you. You combined our
the
thoughts.
diplomats.
Yeah.
Yes. It's my job here. So Luigi Wagner, thank you for the question. We were considering doing a segment on that, and we're glad you tweeted in at me. So that's the end. I'm going to plug a few more things before we end off the Resident Evil segment. Again, Reviving Resident Evil, the two-part series that Timur Hussein worked on. Go watch the behind-the-scenes documentary. It's very good. Scott's review is up on GameSpot, 8 out of 10. He really liked the game. A lot of outlets did. I do. Pete's liking it so far. We have guides going up on antique coins, the bobbleheads, the New Game Plus items. We have a lot of that stuff going up. We have VR, which we just talked about if you're just joining the show, or if you're watching this on YouTube or GameSpot as a broken out video. Play this game in VR. It's a great game. It's, for all intents and purposes, it feels like Capcom is back with Resident Evil. And let's hope they continue this. They've kind of hinted that this is going to be another, that the structure of they do 3 games like this, 3 games like this, 3 games like this, not counting spin-offs. So let's hope, theoretically, a Resident Evil 8 and 9 kind of can build on the success that this inevitably will carry over in the post-launch weeks. So thank you for joining for Resident Evil. We're not done with the show yet, but if you have any more questions about Resident Evil, you can tweet at us, Scott Butterworth, Peter Brown, Mike Mahardy. We're all pretty, I know Scott and Pete are both active with Twitter all the time and responding.
I'm mainly just ranting about politics, though.
Yeah.
I just fave pics of retro games.
We'll try to
that sounds
stop
right.
watching Nazi punching videos to answer your tweets and your comments.
Oh man, we could get into some. It's been a weird week,
Yeah, I
guys.
should not have raised that right now. But yes, thank you so much for joining us for Resident Evil. Leave your questions in the comments. I will peruse them when I get the chance, and then I'll respond on Twitter at @MMahardy. Thanks so much. Wow. Cool. There's a lot of Resident Evil 7 talk.
There's a lot of Resident
I have
Evil.
no problem with that.
What
I
is
really
even
like that
left?
game.
What else?
I don't know
what are we
what,
talking about?
what is
Actually, what
left
is
to
the last
say.
segment?
Let's pull the plug. Oh no, that was the last segment. I'm just saying the show is not done because I want to bring this up again.
Our old friend.
Give it to Pete. No, give it to Scott. This camera.
Yeah, do it.
Again, so Shiva,
happier.
who managed
There
our
you go.
Twitter account, has, as of now, I checked earlier at the beginning of the show, has tweeted about the giveaway. You can get a Turtle Beach PC headset, Recon 320. We're going to announce the winner on Thursday, so reply to the tweet if you want to be considered, and we will look through those. Shiva will pick someone at random. I'm actually not sure how
It's
it works.
based on grammar.
It's based on grammar?
Yeah.
So if you respond eloquently to the
that's
tweet,
true.
The most words with the best grammar. It's that cross section.
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
Most words with the best grammar?
Yeah. So like the more you write, the more chances you have to screw something up. So if you can write more than anyone else,
Eloquently, he replied with the nascent subject of tyranny in this here dire hour of the United States, with the dictatorial pressure being put on these peoples here.
I'm gonna
you're
guess
at
give me that
281
headset.
characters.
Give me that
Counted
headset.
Every letter.
Give me
and
that
that's way too
headset.
many.
I can't take the headset. Huge conflict of interest. I'm not going to do it.
I mean, it's true. We cannot win the headset that we are giving away.
No, that would be dishonest. And I'm a very honest person. Pete, I don't
You
like
look like
so
such a
much.
liar right now.
That is not something an honest person says.
This weird little
Smart
scheming
people don't say
grin.
I am a smart person. Honest people don't say I'm an honest person.
No, I don't feel the need to say I'm honest because I am honest. Cool. I'm glad we finished off those segments before things went off the rails like they inevitably do. So yeah,
Why do we even have rails?
second. This is no train. This isn't a train. We're on a dune buggy going over the deserts of video games and Peter Bronze. Wait, Jean-Luc. I think I got one more thing that I have Jean-Luc. I have queued up and ready to roll. Scott, have you played A Link Between Worlds?
Not in a while. I don't know where this is going.
Well,
I'm
take a look at our
suspicious.
TV if Jean-Luc has it queued up. Oh, look at Pete on the wall. Hey, that's pretty good. Yeah, loop that shit. Yeah,
I want
loop
a
it.
gift of that forever.
Keep it going.
That
Keep
is-
it. Wait, no, Jean-Luc, rewind that. Go again. I want
Oh,
more.
so good.
Yeah, if you have not played Link Between Worlds, here's your subliminal
Exclusive
advertisement.
preview.
Here's your exclusive post-mortem on Link Between Worlds. One more time, please. One more time. Do it. This is Pete sidling along a wall in 2 dimensions.
Next week's episode of the lobby will literally just be this. It will be an hour of this.
Yeah, everybody in the chat, save this. Make me GIFs. If Vine was still around, that could bring Vine back.
I shouldn't amuse myself so much, but I like that.
Vines are all archived, but you could bring Vine back. Whoever the Evan Spiegel from Snapchat should see that. And
In the same way that Justin Timberlake brought sexy back, you
Yes.
could bring Vine back.
bring Vine back. You brought sexy back with that too.
I gotta work on my video game character impressions.
Yeah. All right. Holy shit. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. We will be back next week to talk more video games and video game news, whatever happens over the next week, on Wednesday at 11 p.m. a.m. 11 a.m., not 11 p.m. That would be irresponsible and stupid of
Pacific.
us. 11 a.m. Pacific. That's where the P came
I
out.
thought it was Peter and Mike.
Peter Bronze, Peter and Mike will be here. Who knows what we're going to be talking about. But again, send in your suggestions like Luigi did for segments, and we can talk about them, or just send in comments. Make fun of Pete for that dance. Make fun of Scott for being so diplomatic all the time. Don't make fun of me, please.
Make fun of Nick Margarita.
Make fun of Nick Margarita.
Which is basically just talking about Nick Margarita.
Come into the
Not
chat.
even here to defend himself.
Goob needs reinforcements to make fun of Nick Margarita. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Go play Resident Evil, Yakuza, Tales of Berseria if that's your thing. Resident Evil 7 in VR. Go check out all our Resident Evil content. Watch Reviving Resident Evil. Timur Hussein did a great job. Adam Mason did an awesome job on it. I loved helping them do it. We'll see you next week.